Hi there. Today we're going to use 2 stamp sets to make 4 simple cards. We're using Strong and Beautiful and Silhouette Scenes. I'm going to stamp all black and white for this first card, and I use StazOn as my black ink. I'm using strips, so I cut this lengthwise and scored it in the center. Notice that both of these stamps are foam pad stamps. You can see what you're going to be stamping around them through the block, which is nice. I really like the simplicity of this card. It's just a simple, quick and easy, write a quick note to someone you love in it. Using the same stamps, I went with a Strawberry Slush ink in Whisper White. You might want to try a different color from the new catalog. This card I was inspired to make for a friend of mine who we like to go on adventures. I think we're planning a trip to go pick some huckleberries here in a little bit. I'm using some retired punches, but I wanted to show you this trick. You do not have to waste paper. You can punch right there on that. Just make sure you've left yourself enough room on the edges, because this is going to go on that Strawberry Slush card base. So this hole that I'm punching out, you're not even going to see. But I will have to use a new piece of paper for this piece of cardstock. But when it all comes together, you can't even tell. See, doesn't that look nice? And the card base slips right under there. Get the ink out of the way. Perfect. Now add a little bit of pop. We're going to throw some dimensionals on there. Make that stand out a little bit. These are only $4 for 300 of them, so a little more than a penny a piece, but still don't need a whole bunch of them. You just peel them off there, and it gives it a little layered look, a little more texture. For this card, I'm using the same stamps again. I'm using Rich Razzleberry, and I didn't have a big enough block right in front of me to stick my stamp on, so I used my StazOn pad. Sometimes you just have to be a little creative when you need a tool. So don't judge me. I couldn't decide if I wanted this one to go horizontally or vertically, and based on the size of the stamp and the width of the ribbon, that's a retired ribbon, by the way, but I decided to go at the last minute here with vertical. I'm not real sure how well this StazOn box is gonna work as an ink pad, so I'm gonna try it on my grid paper first, just to be sure. It's a little lighter than I want it to be, so I'm gonna stamp it up again. I stamped it up quite a bit just to make a really good impression. That's much darker and much nicer. I like that better. This ribbon is a retired ribbon. It's in rich raspberry. And kind of a rule of thumb when I'm making a bow, I use 3 times the length of whatever it is I'm wrapping around. Then I do my little cut. I wrap it around, and I don't actually make a bow. I make a double knot. Just one over the other. And one over the other again. There we go. And then for the inside, I'm going to use the same color ink. Generally, this shows up fine, but for some people like a darker color. So if I'm using a dark card base, especially, I might choose a StazOn. For my purposes, this is going to work fine. The recipient's going to be able to see it just fine. Another option would be to adhere a piece of Whisper White inside. I do that quite often as well. But for today, we're just going to keep it as simple as possible. For this last card, we're going to do a gatefold, which is pretty neat. I'm going to start with a sheet of white stock cardstock. I know that the middle of the card is going to be at 5.5 inches, and half of 5.5 inches is 2 3/4. So I'm going to go to the left, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3/4, and to the right, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3/4. I've marked those places, and I'm going to score. I remove this middle one because I don't want to score there. I score the end, and then I have my scores for my gate. And I'm going to cut it lengthwise at 4 1/4, like a card. So my card will be 5.5 by 4 1/4. And see these score marks? That's where the folds will be. When I designed this card, I started with a designer series paper. This happens to be retired. And based on the coordinating colors, I went with the rich raspberry. I chose rich raspberry because it's one of the coordinating colors that you see on the back, or you can see it on my webpage when you order what the coordinating colors are. Notice that my stamp is a little bit longer than my block, and that's okay because I only want part of that stamp to actually go on this piece of cardstock here. This is going to go on the gate part of the fold, and you can even see I'm clipping off the top of the umbrella. I like these larger stamps because you can use the whole thing for a large picture, or you can just use part of it, and the effect can be pretty neat. I'm going to stamp my greeting. You inspire me. Folding the base of a gatefold card is actually pretty important. You need to make sure it's scored real precisely and just bring those together and give it a crisp final score. I like to use a bone folder, but mine is out in the other room, so I'm going to use this stamping block. And now the edges are nice and clear, they don't overlap. When this is all assembled, it's going to be very, very cool. Check it out. One thing to note, when you do assemble it, make sure you only put adhesive on one side of the overlapping part of the gate. That way you can actually open the card. And now let's stamp the greeting on in the center of the card. I hope you enjoyed our stamping time together, and I hope you'll subscribe to me to see my future videos. The sticky side of this label of the stamp wasn't on straight, my fault, and so I tried to pull it off and I ripped the foam a little bit, and when I put it back together it was a little lumpy and I was afraid it wouldn't stamp. It did fine. After I stamped this the first time, I decided I didn't like it. It wasn't dark enough, it was a little crooked, and so I flipped it over and did it again. Once I get the stamps out of the way and the paper, you can see the double image printed on my grid paper.